rather than about introducing yet another piece of legislation that's piecemeal, that isn't part of a wider plan around the security of our information.
Chris Farfoy.
Chair, thank you for the chance to speak to Part 1 of the Identity Information Confirmation Bill, a bill which has a similar title to the previous bill but sets out to do something vastly different. It does set out to combat identity theft, and the crime of identity theft is not a new one, but I guess in the digital age, when we have much easier access and faster access to information, the prevalence of identity theft is increasing, and some research said that there is an average of around 2,000 New Zealanders affected by online scams, identity theft, credit card fraud and viruses each day. And we've already heard from one member from across the House, Mr Chris Ockenvoll, about his personal experience when his bank cards were swiped, and unfortunately for him, being a victim of crime, the perpetrators sought to max out his credit card, and he said on the record that he was the recipient of many final demands for the fun that the criminals had with his credit card. But it is a serious issue. There are also around in 2008 and 2009, there were some statistics to show that there were more than 7,000 incidents of fraud and false pretences using bank cards, and the police in 2009 identified 900 cases of identity fraud here in New Zealand, but they thought that that was just a fraction of what was going on that wasn't being detected, and that was, Mr Chair, some 3 years ago. I think it was my colleague, the Honourable Ruth Dyson, the able chair of the Government and Administration Select Committee, who said that these people are trying to use common situations to steal identities, and that's what this is all really about. It is about the use of things like passports or other documentations that have the basic details of an individual, where they might be used to steal an identity and make use of that person's assets or their potential. And Mr Chair, I think for the confidence, and my colleague Claire Curran had mentioned this earlier, for the confidence of the New Zealand public and confidence...
Point of order.
I think this bill's in the name of Nathan Guy.
No.
Well, the copy that's on the table of the House is in his name. Well, that's
Chris Farfoy.
Well, thank you, Mr Chair. I'm just trying to pick up where I left. It's inherent for the confidence of the people of New Zealand around documents like passports, like birth certificates, like death certificates, like marriage certificates, that we do have a credible database around that and confidence in that information. And I guess this bill, which we've just learnt is in the name of the Honourable Chris Tremaine, is before this House, because the validation of that information is very important. And I guess this bill opens up for private organisations such as banks to, if someone were to come in and say Trevor Mallard came in to open up a new bank account and used a passport as his identifying documentation, then if the bank asked Mr Mallard if they were okay to check with the DIA as to the validity of his documentation, if he said yes and it all checked out, then I'm sure the bank would quite obligingly help Mr Mallard open up a bank account. But if it did and it found there were some irregularities, then we could pick up an instance potentially of identity fraud where someone was trying to steal the identity of Trevor Mallard, as strange that may seem. But, Mr Chair, I guess it has been pointed out by Mr Ockenvoll, I think also, is that the individual has to consent for the validation of this information, and I guess it would be pretty You wouldn't raise your chances if your bank said, well, can we check this information, and the individual said no. I think the bank would pretty much turn around and said, well, you can try somebody else, son. But in terms of passports, I think the confidence in those documents is very important, and if people did turn up to, as an example, a bank with a passport, we need to make sure that they are 100% secure and that we have confidence around that document. And we have had, in my memory, in the last maybe 6 or 7 years, a couple of instances where a few foreign nationals, I should say, attempted or actually got hold of New Zealand passports in a scurrilous manner. So in order to try and combat identity theft and fraud, this bill seeks to allow agencies and private organisations such as banks to be, Mr Chair?
Chris Farfoy.
Thank you, Mr. To be able to verify the particulars that are offered up by that individual. And just going back to part 1, Mr. Chair, and clause number 4, which is the purpose. And if you can just allow me to read that. The purpose of this Act is to facilitate the use of an electronic service that allows agencies to confirm identity information about individuals so as to A, contribute to the prevention of crime, we've talked about that, and B, ensure that agencies can use and, if necessary, record confirmed identity information. And I think that maybe we should potentially look at making an amendment here to 4B and make it read, ensure that agencies can use and, if necessary, securely record confirmed identity information, because we've seen, Mr Chair, in recent months some concern amongst the public about the security of information that a number of government agencies have had, and again to list the number of the instances. We've got the work and income kiosks where one individual, citizen journalist Keith Ing, was able to access some very delicate information, 7,000 files of the likes of medical records. Yes, he could have used it for medical records, the information around fostering of children, invoices for contractors, some pretty serious information that was available to a private citizen publicly in the reception of a work and income office. We've also heard of the email that went to Bromwell that contained the information of 6,000. Sorry, I'll carry on. That information pertained to 6,748 individuals, and that is a lot of individuals. And to be contained in one email was a serious breach of privacy. We've also heard recently in the last week around some irregularities with the privacy information around NovaPay. Again, this is a secondary issue for NovaPay. The primary issue was the fact that people weren't getting paid. And then the secondary issue comes through with the fact that some staff members' information was being given to schools where they weren't working, and obviously that is a serious concern, and hopefully we can get some information around that. And then Dr David Clark has pointed out on a number of occasions there were the private information of around 6,300 individuals was incorrectly released by the Inland Revenue Department. So, Mr Chair, I just want to point back to clause 4 to say that maybe we should have a look at changing it to clause 4B to ensure that agencies can use and, if necessarily, securely record confirmed identity information. But, Mr Chair, we do support this bill. We support the effort to try and combat identity fraud. As I say, 2,000 people a day in New Zealand the victims of some kind of scam or identity theft, and in this day and age, when the digital age where information is much more freely available, the prospect of identity theft is much, much higher. It has happened in the past. We've had one recent example in the last 2 or 3 years where someone not too far away, who sat not too far away from us, took the identity of a dead baby, David Garrett, and so that goes to show that while the theft identity theft is not a new crime. It is much more prevalent now because of the ease in which the information is transferred via the internet. That identity theft is much more of an issue. And I just do want to point again to Mr. Chris Ockenville, our own victim of identity theft, someone who had his credit card stolen. Was it recently, Mr. Ockenville? It was some time ago. So I'm sure that things may have got worse. So we have within this House a prime example of what can happen if people get hold of your private information and things can go haywire. So we do support this bill. We believe it does take some good measures, but again, we do have some concerns around the security of information.
Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr Chairman, I want to start off by thanking Ruth Dyson for the work that she did